frankly, the very vague, incoherent 20 points that Trump and Netanyahu agreed to, no Palestinian party was involved in that, is not going to be workable. They're going to have to be further negotiations.
Yeah. We're going to start with that story that's on the front page of the Times. The ceasefire between Israel and Hamas coming into effect. The Israeli military, the IDF, says it has partially withdrawn troops from the Gaza Strip as a result of the agreement, with thousands of Palestinians now making their way back to the north of Gaza, which has been heavily bombarded in recent months. Hamas now has until 10 a.m. on Monday to release all of Israel's hostages, alive and dead, when US President Donald Trump is expected to be in the region for a visit. Chris Doyle is director of the Council for Arab-British Understanding, and he's back on the programme. Hello, Chris.
Good evening, Henry.
Good evening. Now, you've seen the pictures, the tide of humanity thronging north toward what remains of their homes and communities, and then you've seen the pictures of families gathering in Hostages Square, hoping to receive their relatives who've been in captivity for 2 years. When you look at these pictures, when you look at these write-ups and consider what's going on, what do you think?
I think it's just so tragic that it's taken this long to get back to a ceasefire. This is actually the second ceasefire that we've had this year. And, this all could have been sorted out earlier, and there's reasons for that. But also, of course, it's just the hope that we all cling to, that it will all go ahead, that there will be a full and final end to these military operations, to the horrors and atrocities in Gaza, that, the aid will get in, the hostages will be released, and Palestinian detainees, those held without trial, will be released as well. And that therefore we can bring, if not quite joy, but at least a little bit of hope to people who've just experienced hell on absolute steroids over the last couple of years. It's indescribable. And those people going back, 90% of the population of Gaza have been displaced, not once or twice, but many times, maybe as many as 10 times, some of them. And they're going back because where they are at the moment, they're in tents with no infrastructure. They're going back to check to see if their house still exists. Yeah. It's indescribable what they have been through.
I can only imagine, Chris. But when you say this deal could have been arrived at much earlier, I'm wondering how much earlier, and why are you so confident? Because I'm thinking about the things that I've heard and said and read in the past 48 or so hours, and some of the hostage families, Israeli families, have said the same thing. Why are you so confident it could have been arrived at earlier?
Essentially, the contours of the deal that's been arrived at now has been around for a long, long time. Last September there was a very similar deal. There was a ceasefire between January and March that Israel violated, and then we went into a period of a complete blockade and starvation of Gaza, where they denied any food, water, fuel and medicine into Gaza. There were many occasions when we could have seen an end to the military operations. I think now there is more of a momentum. I think you see, for the first time, a White House that is really, truly engaged full throttle in trying to make this happen. And it's banged heads together in the Middle East. It's managed to ensure that the requisite regional actors are all involved: Egypt, Qatar, Saudi, Turkey. So I think that it will be unlikely that any of the sides are going to want to be seen as getting in the way.
Yeah, I see, Chris, that Donald Trump has apparently personally guaranteed to Hamas that he will not allow Israel to break the ceasefire after that first phase, when the hostages are released and the convicted prisoners and the detainees, those Palestinians who've been detained without trial, are released too. But you'll be aware that Hamas has refused to disarm, although it accepts it won't be actively involved in the future government of Gaza. And Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, has warned that our soldiers, the IDF, will not leave until they do. Now, how much is this about showboating and how much is of real concern?
Well, I think you have to see it in various stages. So those first three steps of the ceasefire, getting the aid in, and the release of hostages and detainees, this is a matter of consensus that's been there for some time. The steps after that are hotly disputed and debated. And I think, frankly, the very vague, incoherent 20 points that Trump and Netanyahu agreed to, no Palestinian party was involved in that, is not going to be workable. They're going to have to be further negotiations, as there was even to get these through. There's going to have to be Palestinian agency in Gaza. I mean, it's going to have to be Palestinians running Gaza, but in the Trump-Netanyahu 20 points, that's not the case. So there's lots of things to work out.
Well, Chris, and talking of Palestinian agency,
Hamas to disarm as well,
sure,
you know, is crucial. There's going to have to be demilitarization, but there's also a fundamental contradiction which hasn't been brought out. That the United States, Donald Trump has said, you Hamas have to sign up to this deal, but at the same time, you Hamas must not have anything to do with the future of the Gaza Strip. But then it's Hamas who is meant to be signing away the future of the Gaza Strip and handing it over effectively to this border peace that Donald Trump will be chairman of. But why, if Hamas is such a nefarious actor, is it being given the authority to deal with Gaza's future here, to sign it away? That's a contradiction. It should have been the Palestinian Authority in Ramallah.
Well, that Palestinian Authority has been
the Palestinian state.
But Chris, let me ask you. It's on that point. One of our listeners wondered who is that leader, who is the Palestinian equivalent of a Mandela or a Gandhi, a figure who can unite the nation after conflict without seeking retribution, without wanting to destroy the other side. And I floated the notion of the jailed Fatah leader Marwan Barghouti, who was initially on the list to be freed, but then taken off it by the Israeli leadership. What do you think? Why are they so concerned about him in particular? Briefly, if you will.
Well, the Israeli right and Netanyahu don't want to see a united Palestinian leadership. He's wanted to ensure that Gaza and the West Bank is divided geographically, demographically, politically. And that's why this deal only deals with Gaza. And that's why they won't allow the Palestinian Authority President Abbas to have any role in this whatsoever. They want to keep it divided because they don't want a Palestinian state. And that's at the heart of it. But going forward, that has to be the way. There's got to be one single Palestinian body running both. And Israel has to understand, the leadership, that there's got to be a political process that leads to Palestinian freedom.
But you know, Chris, that Israel will not agree to anything that either in imagination or in reality poses a threat, and that's going to be the strongest and longest sticking point. I'm going to have to leave it there, though. Chris, thank you very much indeed for joining us. That's Chris Doyle, Director of the Council for